the yearning of the Western European countries for expansion of the empire and acquire new territories or colonies resulted in these countries going to Asia and Africa. Thus, they established their colonies and expanded their rule. Consequently, there arose a competition between European nations to establish colonies. This greed for colonization among the Western European nations caused the economic, social and cultural ruin of the Asian African countries. The result of this on world politics was such that the First World War, Bolshevik Revolution and other significant events took place. So, dear students, let's study about these details. Western Europe and colonialism in Asia-Africa. The Western European countries wanted to expand their empire in Asia-Africa. Their greed for colonization did not spare even their neighboring countries. Spain had taken control over Netherlands, Belgium and Luxembourg. Later on, some of their provinces were captured by France. When the Portuguese king died without an heir, Portugal came under the rule of the Spanish king because of his blood relation. So for 6 decades, the monopoly of establishing colonies in non-European countries was with Spain. Similarly, Italy and German states became the victim of the greed of France and Austria. When the European powers were tightening their grip over the Asian and African nations, many of the European nations which had become free, following the footsteps of England, made many of the Afro-Asian nations their colonies. Colonialism in Asia. After strengthening its grip over India, England expanded its empire to Sri Lanka, Myanmar, formerly known as Burma, Singapore and Malaysia. England entered China also, but due to the opium trade between England and China, there were wars from 1839 to 1842 which came to be known as the Opium Wars in history. China lost this war and thereby lost 5 of its ports to England, where England could carry on their trade and thus expanded their empire. Taking advantage of China's weakness, Japan, Russia, Germany, France, Belgium and America also acquired trade and political rights. Enormous oil resources in the desert region of West Asia attracted the Europeans to establish colonies there. England, Germany, Russia and America established oil companies in Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia and Bahrain, and made efforts to take care of their own interests. Colonialism in Africa. The Dutch established its colony for the first time at the end of the 15th century in South Africa. After that, England and France established their colonies in Cape and Algeria in North Africa, respectively. The vast provinces of Africa seemed quite suitable for acquiring raw material and selling ready products post-industrial revolution, because of which European countries competed to establish colonies. King Leopold of Belgium seized the vast provinces of Congo and established his rule. England established its colonies in Egypt, some provinces of East Africa and some of South Africa. France established its colonies in Tunisia, Morocco and West Africa provinces. Germany established its empire in some provinces of East and West Africa. Italy captured the African provinces around the Red Sea. Spain and Portugal also seized some provinces of Africa. A conference for the European nations was held in Berlin in 1884 to 85 in the midst of this competition to establish colonies. Different African territories were divided among the European nations at the end of the conference. Thus, the colonial dominance of different European nations was established over the entire Africa. While on one hand, the greedy European nations were trying to colonize various Asian African territories, on the other hand, Germany and Italy had completed the process of its respective political unification. Thus, the unified Germany plunged into the competition of industrialization, commercialization, and colonization. Thus, these quickly changing global phenomena had exploited some of these countries politically, economically, and socially, due to which their development had stopped. This had led to the First World War. Factors that caused the First World War. The First World War could be considered as one of the most heartbreaking and unforgettable events of the modern world. Many factors were responsible for this. The First World War began on the 1st of August 1914. Germany had defeated France in the Sedan War, because of which France had to sign the Frankfurt Treaty in 1871, according to which France had to pay a war fine as well as give away two of its provinces, Lawrence and Absces, to Germany. France had not been able to overcome this humiliation. Thus, the Frankfurt Treaty itself was the cause of the First World War. The end of a war sowed the seeds of a future war. Economic factors, and England had established its vast empire in Asia and Africa in the 19th century. It exploited its colonies economically and became rich. Due to industrialization and swift colonization, Europe required a huge quantity of raw material. In the last quarter of the 19th century, Germany had started the competition to procure the markets in Asia and Africa. Germany started supplying cheaper goods in comparison to England and France. The Afro-Asian markets that England and France dominated were thus broken up by Germany. Consequently, there was an intense economic competition between Germany and England. Military force was necessary and important for the competition that the European nations got into for expansion. England, France, Austria, Russia, etc. had begun expanding their military power, while in countries like Japan, Italy and Germany, compulsory military training had started. Production of weapons was increased under the pretext of self-defense. Thus, militarism got an impetus, and military competition, added to economic competition, created a serious atmosphere of war. Groupism and secret treaties played a major role in the First World War. The world was divided into two groups before the First World War. On one side was the group of Germany, Austria, Hungary, Bulgaria and Turkey, while on the other side was the group of England, France, Russia and Japan. A feeling of jealousy, enmity, mistrust, fear and hatred evolved between the groups, which was an important factor of the First World War. The independence of Belgium and Greece and the unification of Germany and Italy were the result of nationalism. But later, the feeling of nationalism took an extreme and narrow form in Europe. Economic jealousies, competitions and colonialism in Europe had increased so much that the national interest of each other began to clash. Leading European nations began teaching extreme and destructive nationalism to its people. Love for one's own nation and hatred for other nations was encouraged. The German chief, Kaiser William, was another originator of nationalism and colonialism. He was overambitious and believed in world leadership. He wanted to get things done according to his will with the help of his grand military power. The feeling of war spread across other nations, as in Germany, and this had resulted in the First World War. The newspapers of the European nations aroused so much of hatred among people with their mutual, derogatory, provocative, exaggerated and false write-ups. By spitting venom against rival nations, they made it so that the rulers of the respective nations could not even make efforts for establishing peace and harmony. The philosophy about war, the policy of war is welfare, took root in Europe. The German writer Trotsky published maxims like "Only the mighty deserve to live" and "War alone is the national need." Nietzsche, the German writer, expressed war as a sacred work. And the Prince of Austria and his wife were assassinated by being shot at by a member of the Serbian terrorist organization Black Hand. Austria blamed Serbia for the involvement in the act and gave an ultimatum to hand over the culprit to Austria within 48 hours. Serbia declared its ignorance in the matter. Without listening to anything from Serbia, Austria declared war on Serbia. The First World War had begun with this.